Okay, great. I'm here with Mike Halperin, class Cincinnati Country Day School, class of 1997. Thank you so much, Mike, for joining us today.
Yeah, anytime. Happy to be here. Good memories from CCDS.
We have learned that you're doing some amazing things at the moment with our country battling COVID-19. You're on the front lines. What is your role, Mike? What is your profession, and how have you been brought into kind of the work that you're doing battling this virus?
So yeah, I'm an emergency physician in the Bronx. So we, for a lot of reasons, got hit pretty hard with this new coronavirus. So that's sort of my day job. Um, I came back to the Bronx after a year of fellowship in which I sort of went down the path of specializing in emergency ultrasound. So came back to the Bronx to start a fellowship program at the institution where I trained as a resident.
Yeah, great. So you're an ER doctor then, and with specializing in ultrasound, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So what is it like in an ER these days? I mean, have they been in the Bronx converted entirely to COVID-19 treatment centers?
Um, yeah, there is a bit of levity to this, but the running joke is what happened to all the appendicitis, what happened to all the car accidents, the bread and butter emergency medicine um, is still there, but the volume of non-COVID related complaints is drastically down.
Mm,
It does at times feel like you're pretty much almost primarily a COVID unit, so to speak.
yeah. When did you begin to understand that New York was going to really be hit hard, right? We first started learning about COVID in January.
Yeah,
At that point, it was kind of an international thing. It was happening in Asia. In
sure.
February, things began to really, realize the global impact that this could have. When did you, in your own role in the Bronx, begin to realize, wow, this is not only is this coming to us, but we're really going to have a very difficult time with this?
Yeah. Um, I think February, definitely early March, the there's a fairly large cohort of emergency physicians that interact on social media, and it's not hard, or it wasn't hard, to see this virus sort of marching its way from China to Iran to Italy to Spain. Um, so you look at New York City, and it didn't take a big leap of imagination to see that it was going to come, um, and it came in force.
Yeah.
One of my co-fellows on the ultrasound front is a doc in Madrid, so I was getting a lot of firsthand sort of what to expect stories from him in particular. Um,
When at its most challenging, when it was the at its height,
yeah,
and maybe you still feel that you're there, what does your day look like? Are you conducting a lot of the procedures that you normally would in an ER, or does the COVID-19 require you to be doing different types of medicine and caring for patients in a different way? Does your day look a lot different, or pretty similar to before the virus came?
yeah. I mean, in the ER, we certainly see respiratory distress as part of our bread and butter. Um, what's interesting, sort of in a glass half full kind of way, is this became a respiratory distress unit in numbers that we are not used to seeing. Um, we're definitely um, we're trained to sort of put out fires, so to speak. But at one point, it seemed like the whole place was on fire. And I definitively think we are in New York City past the height of it. Our ERs really, over the last, I don't know, week or so, have really hit a plateau. Thankfully, there was definitely a time in late March, early April, when we definitely transitioned from emergency medicine to sort of battlefield response kind of situations. Um, but it appears, knock on wood, it seems as if the public health measures have, for the most part, bought us some time right now. So it's not definitively out of the woods, but it is definitely a much more manageable situation now than late March, early April, for sure.
Yeah. Have you been taking extra steps in protecting yourself? I'm sure, right? You said at one point it felt like the whole place was on fire. I'm sure you must have been going from patient to patient, and we've been hearing a lot about whether or not people in your position have the proper equipment and are taking the proper safety precautions. I'm sure you probably do every day on your job, but did you find that challenging in this particular crisis?
Definitely. This has been from the get-go. Um, all the policies, all the advice has been changing almost seemingly daily, especially at the start of it. Was this droplet? Was this contact? Was this airborne? What kind of precautions were necessary during what interactions with patients? Um, so that was difficult and anxiety producing. Um, but I think the personal protective equipment issue has been challenging. I don't know if the word debacle is the right way to go, but it certainly presented challenges that the collective we all across healthcare systems weren't ready for. And I think there will be a time and a place for someone to eloquently look back and place blame on how that came to be. But what it did create on the ground was um, a very concerted effort to be creative and to figure out how really primarily to protect our staff, which is not just docs but resident physicians, nurses, x-ray techs, physician assistants, house cleaners, registration folks. There's a whole army of people in the ER, in the hospital system itself, who, if these ERs or these units become sort of hot zones, so to speak, then every single one of those people should have the proper PPE in place. And it just came so fast and in such numbers that I think, again, sort of the collective we were a bit caught off guard. So yeah, that was kind of what sort of spawned the whole goggles thing.
Yeah, so tell us about that. So we learned about you through the national media. An idea that you had was in the
Yeah.
sports section, the New York Times, where you were thinking about ski goggles and the use of that in providing care. Tell us a little bit about how that idea came to you and how the goggles initiative really took off.
Yeah, well, so the backdrop is really a lot of our physicians, emergency physicians, are going to be performing intubations. Basically, if someone is in such respiratory distress that they need mechanical ventilation, it often falls on the emergency physician to perform that procedure. And your eye and your mouth is literally, inches away from your patient in that scenario. So, not just respirators, but goggles are definitely needed, because that is what we call an aerosolizing procedure, meaning it's airborne in that moment. And there's a lot of debate about how long these particulates remain airborne. But I think everybody from the get-go was pretty convinced that in that situation of placing a breathing tube for someone, that is the time that you should have the best personal protective equipment that you can. And so what happened was, in talking with some of our staff and for one example, one of our chief residents had ordered 200 pairs of goggles from from a company. But the problem with all this, you know, sort of nationwide, arguably worldwide, has never been really a money issue. It's been a vendor issue. So you could place an order for goggles, but then, you know, a few days later you would get an email saying, sorry, we can't fill that order, or, you know, sorry, these respirators are no longer allowed to be exported past this European border. So the goggles basically was an idea to crowdsource it. How do we get eye protection without needing a vendor, so to speak?
Yeah.
You know, and I actually initially reached out to a bunch of buddies from Country Day because the initial thought was sort of, whether it's like squash goggles or anything really that would keep airborne particulates out of someone's eyes. And then I ended up reaching out to my aunt and uncle out in Steamboat, Colorado, and shot them sort of a request for a few pairs of old ski goggles. And then that request sort of went out to a bunch of their buddies in town, and just sort of serendipitously ended up in the lap of a few people who really made the logistics of this little project take off pretty remarkably. So one of the emails went to a ski coach, Karen Tatenbaum, who was a friend of my aunt, who is a friend of my aunt. And then that email went to a gentleman by the name of John Schaefer, who runs a ski mountain in Massachusetts. And through a couple of his buddies, basically the website went up in, I don't know, it felt like a day. And then what became sort of a local issue in New York City of a couple of just, friends that I'd reached out to throughout the city asking if they needed help with eye protection. To yesterday morning, John wrote me an email saying there are requests from like 600 hospitals, all 50 states,
Wow.
a couple countries in South America, France. So it's really really a remarkable little endeavor, and just kind of brilliant logistics and brilliant sort of human ingenuity. And it's done wonders, not just on the sort of personal protective eyewear side of things, but it's also done wonders as far as sort of morale and psyche. And I think it's just it's pretty neat how amazing these humans are.
That's fantastic. That's really wonderful. Do you have any idea how many ski goggles have been collected to date?
It looks like about 32,000 and counting.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And
so
you were starting with just a handful.
So the residency for which I work spans 3 hospitals. So my initial email to John was, is it, I didn't know, I had no idea. I didn't know if I was asking way too much, or if this is something he could really just knock out of the park. So I was very humble about it, and I said, hey, over these 3 hospitals, we have about 200 to 300 people in each emergency department who would certainly benefit. And I was really honest. I was like, if you can do this, amazing. If not, any help is great. So it started at those 3 hospitals and then just rapidly expanded. So it's been really remarkable to see.
Yeah, that must be very exciting. Are you yourself a skier?
Yeah. So I grew up chasing my aunt and uncle around Steamboat, Colorado.
Okay.
More of a snowboarder these days, but
All right.
but yeah. No, I definitely enjoy the mountains.
And have you been wearing your own goggles?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
The optics of the ERs are very different these days. Everybody's running around in respirators and goggles and
Sure.
of some sort, and it's really difficult to tell who anybody is anymore.
Yeah.
So another neat idea came. I don't know who came up with it, but people are starting to print basically big pictures of themselves on their chests. So patients primarily can sort of see who they're talking to.
I could see that as being really challenging, right? I'm sure you as a doctor, you want to make a connection with your
Yeah,
patient as fully as you can. And if
absolutely.
you're covered up from head to toe and they can't even recognize a person in there, that must make for a very difficult for you to create a relationship.
Yeah, it's it's very understandably terrifying for people. So I definitely find myself introducing who I am and quickly apologizing for all the sort of Martian gear.
Mike, one of the things that we're thinking about at Country Day and at any school and anywhere in this country at this moment is what living with this virus is going to be like. Certainly a lot of us are living in shelter in place instructions as you and I are speaking, but there also is the thought, as you say, hitting a plateau, and that a lot of steps have been taken to flatten the curve and with success.
Yeah.
What do you imagine, for those of us who are not in the medical profession, what do you think that return to normalcy, or return to uh, something that isn't at least shelter in place is going to look like in terms of a time span and in terms of what we might expect in a school or just folks who are at home?
Yeah, I think that's definitely, arguably the bigger challenge. How do we move forward? I think you're seeing a lot of the debates kind of rage, on sort of personal circles as well as national debates. Um, um, I think we have to know where this virus is. So you'll hear a lot about testing, and that's going to be super important. Um, Even it's getting better, but in New York City still, unless you're being admitted to the hospital, meaning you're so sick that you need hospitalization, unless you're that person, you're not getting tested for the most part. Um, uh, which makes it very hard to figure out where this disease is in the community and to sort of track down all that potential person's contacts and contain and prevent the spread from person to person to person. I think we'll get there. I think we'll get there at different speeds in different communities. Um, um, but I think, there is going to be a new normal. People are going to sort of think long and hard about how to congregate in large groups, like sporting events or restaurants or bars or any number of things that we used to get a bunch of people together to do. Um, we're going to have to learn how to do that safely, because there is a concern, and this is all anecdote, but where I work up in the Bronx, we're a big trauma center. So, at the outset, we, a lot of our trauma patients who were coming in for, pick your issue, car accident, or penetrating trauma, they would oftentimes sort of incidentally been found to have had coronavirus. So again, this is all anecdote. This isn't fact. This hasn't been studied yet, but there is a concern that there are a lot of asymptomatic people running around out there. And if those people who have no symptoms are infectious, then it creates an obvious problem. So it's going to be a matter of our ability on the public health side of things to be able to really do a lot of the bootstrap epidemiology to identify folks who have disease, and then to be able to reach out to their circles and make sure that people aren't sort of incidentally sort of typhoid Marys running around all over the place.
So-called super spreaders, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
we've been getting lots and lots of advice, and anybody is, right, about ways to stay healthy and just good common practices that we should follow. As a doctor, speaking to maybe some folks who are going to be watching here in Cincinnati or in other places, washing hands, social distancing, I've heard of these things. What advice would you give to us all about really trying to stay healthy and live well in this time?
That's just it. It's not nothing novel, nothing overly complicated, but it is a lot of the usual hygiene. Hand washing, wiping down common surfaces. Trying to keep as much distance as possible, but balanced by the need for the world to get back to some semblance of normal. I think if you look back sort of historically, when pandemics do wreak a little havoc, the debate is always just the one we're having. How do we? You obviously can't lock down forever, but then you can't at the same time sort of go back to business as usual. So there is a happy medium in there somewhere. It's going to involve a lot of focus on hand hygiene, and testing and contact tracing and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Which the real dilemma, honestly, is going to be when and if this sort of wreaks havoc in refugee camps or the developing world, where there just is no ability to sort of socially isolate. Imagine many parts of the world where there is no running water. So how are you gonna keep your hands clean? So it's a big challenge, and it's really clinically this has been a sort of an emergency medicine, ICU, and the whole medical establishment has sort of become COVID clinicians. But the real challenge is already, but is going to fundamentally shift to the epidemiologists and the on the ground public health practitioners who are going to keep this at bay, ideally until the vaccines come out. There's a lot of work happening on not just vaccines, but convalescent serum, different ideas to try and do some good until we can sort of get back on our feet.
Yeah. Well, I liked your use of the word happy medium. So as long as we got the word happy in there somewhere, and you certainly do seem to feel optimistic, about the chances of, you're not telling us, by tomorrow or anything like that, but that you do see a path towards maybe nothing that will ever be quite the same as before COVID-19, but at least something a little bit closer to normalcy.
Yeah, I think we'll get there. I think, I mean, society will go on. Some people are debating whether the handshake is going to go the way of the dodo bird. It wouldn't surprise me. The folks in sort of the influenza community have been saying for a long time that maybe handshaking is a bad idea when the flu is running around. So, I think happy medium is the right thing to focus on. And as these debates rage, because they will rage, I think it's just going to be more important than ever for all of us to sort of listen to each other and sort of prevent the aggravation and the anger from building up, because this is new, and anybody who says they definitively have the answer is going to be, you need to sort of meet everything with a little bit of humility and understand that this is a new challenge, and we're just gonna have to figure out the best way to move forward.
Yeah, great. So just to pivot a little bit, you were Cincinnati Country Day School, class of 1997. How many years did you attend Country Day?
From 6th grade through graduation. So how many years? Yeah.
And
Yeah.
did you begin, was it at Country Day when you began to become interested in the study of medicine? And, what were some of the teachers or the subjects that you remember most fully during your time at Country Day who had the biggest influence on you?
Yeah, no, so I was very late to the medicine game. Um, um, I don't know, in high school, the academics was amazing. Great group of friends there. The teachers were awesome. Um, but I might fall into the category of one of those high schoolers that didn't really have a plan. Um, I think that would be fair to say. I I ended up in the Peace Corps after college, and that's really when I started down the road of medicine. Um,
Where did you serve?
I was in Central America, in Panama, off the Atlantic coast.
Okay,
Yeah,
fantastic. Um, do you stay in touch with your Country Day friends and community? Do you have family here in Cincinnati?
family's in Jersey now, but yeah, every day there is a I don't know 10-15 person text chain from Cincinnati uh, friends. And there was a group who bought our emergency department about 40 pizzas about a week and a half ago. So yeah, still really good friends with a lot of those guys. Um, so yeah, it's Country Day is awesome, and I really do value my time there. Um, Learned a lot. I know. Um, it sounds like things sort of physically have changed there. Last time I drove by, it didn't look like the old high school, but yeah, I
When was
love.
the last time you were on campus? Would you guess, or drove by?
Um,
Testing you here.
Probably about 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah,
There's been a lot of building, right? So for somebody who graduated in '97, the upper school, the lower school, our athletic facilities, early childhood, a lot of differences.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, awesome place. And definitely still a lot of lifelong friends from Country Day.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic. Well, for somebody who began as a high schooler, didn't quite know where he wanted to go, to now a Bronx ER specialist whose idea has led to 30,000 plus and growing goggles. Congratulations and thank you so much for everything you're doing, Mike. And we're really proud, although you and I have never met before. This is the first time we're meeting. But as the head of the school, I'm certainly proud of all that you are doing and all of your colleagues, just so very, very helpful. I'm sure that in that height of that peak, that must have been a very anxious time and scary both for your patients, but also for you as well. And so very, very grateful for everything that you're doing and for spending some time today.
Anytime, my pleasure.
Great.
Reach out anytime if there are more questions.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Take care, Tony.